like to welcome you all for our INCON Learning autumn session. We haven't had one for since before the summer. So Samantha Glass is Director of Corporate Affairs and Communication and Sustainability for the International Convention Centre in Sydney. And today she's going to talk to us about the 6 key trends that are shaping today's events. So I'll hand over to Sam and I will take questions during the session, and we will also have 10 minutes at the end. So welcome everybody.
Thanks, Angela. I do want to start by saying Budjari Gamarua, and Budjari Gamarua is Gadigal language for good day. And it's a way in which we seek to pay respects to the traditional owners or the traditional custodians of the land in which I'm calling in to you from in Sydney, Australia today, which is known as Gadigal country. Okay, I thought just to run you through what I'm going to discuss today is just a little bit of an introduction as to why we set about undertaking this research and the report that resulted from it. And part of that introduction is to just really quickly walk you through the legacy program that we have in place here at ICC Sydney. Now, ultimately, the state of our environment, which by that I mean both the physical and the societal environment, was part of the inspiration for the report. You know, we're in an environment of constant change. And as that environment changes, so do societal values. You know, the acceleration of climate change means we're looking to reduce our environmental impact. We've globally seen Me Too and Black Lives Matters and other movements that remind us that we need to be more respectful and inclusive of all people and seek to provide equity wherever we can. You know, there's an increasing prevalence of AI and robotics, which has us asking as a society, what do we need to be prepared for when it comes to managing and hosting events, and what do those younger generations want from technology through events? And so these are the things that are starting to change our values. And what we wanted to do at ICC Sydney was really look to address what I think is a deficit of respect for many members, for a number of members of our community, but also the need to rebuild trust within some elements of our society. And I think as members of the business events community, we operate in an environment that brings people together in person in a manner that can really respond to many of these issues that the world is facing at the moment. A little bit about the author of our report. His name is Mark McCrindle. He runs an organisation here in Australia that's been around for over 20 years. He's a demographer, a futurist and a social commentator. He's very well known in Australia, but he's well regarded all around the world and has been marked with coining a number of demographic phrases if you operate in that industry, including the current alpha generation, which is the generation currently being born at the moment, which comes after Gen Z. Now, each year, Mark puts out, or McCrindle put out, an annual trends report. So they're looking at Australian societal trends. And in 2023, 4 of those trends really resonated with us here at ICC Sydney. And then one of them was the idea of the virtuous consumer. And that's people not just caring about the price of things, but caring about the environmental impact, whether it's local, what the supply chain looks like that created that particular product or service. Is it sustainable? Does it contribute to a circular economy? So they're starting to ask much more questions around things that they purchase rather than just the price. We looked at, you know, moving from an industrial society to an artisan society, and this is really something that comes to play for us in the development of events. Is, you know, we're looking to create bespoke experiences that are relevant to the tribe or relevant to the association of the event that we might be operating, what might be hosting and running an event for. The rise of the intrapreneur. So we're all very familiar with the term entrepreneur, but intrapreneurs are people that have that mindset but want to create change within an organisation rather than creating a startup from scratch outside of an organisation. And then we look at another was the humanit AI, as they coined it. So looking at where does artificial intelligence cross over with humans, and what do we need to be thinking about in terms of privacy, ethics, but also maintaining efficiencies and effectiveness when we're using robotics and AI. And the next element that fed into our desire to undertake this research was the legacy program that we manage here at ICC Sydney. So this is a program that's really about not just building capacity within the Sydney community across those streams that you can see there around the environment, First Nations, inclusion and belonging, innovators and entrepreneurs, but also the creative industries. But it enables us to quickly make connections between the Sydney community and an event organiser. But we argue that it also enriches the delegate experience by giving them something that's new, different, and unique to the Sydney to the Sydney community. Now, I will just really quickly run through each of those streams because it provides the context for the results that the report outlines. When it comes to environmentally sustainable events, we're able to look at pre and post-event reporting to measure carbon footprints. We have a number of checklists and guides in place to help you understand what does a plastic-free event look like, what does a sustainable event look like, what are some of the things that we can lean into when it comes to reducing food, reusing food, picking like carbon-friendly menus. We run a program where we introduce edible centerpieces. So we work with the chefs to put some beautifully presented food in vases on tables rather than flowers that might go straight to waste, and then they can be then created into dishes in the kitchen in the evening and shared with some of our homeless community later that day. When it comes to First Nations, there are so many things I think that we still have to learn from First Nations communities. They are the original sustainability experts. They really think about the impact on the environment, not just for current generations, but for many, many, many generations into the future before taking a step. There's an amazing amount of cultural talent within the First Nations community, but also an ability to really tweak your procurement and your supply chains by looking at local First Nations businesses to help with self-determination for a part of our community that has suffered injustices for many generations. And it's also a hugely popular stream of the legacy program, and in fact 90% of the activations that are run at events here at ICC Sydney tap into that First Nations network. The third is around inclusion and belonging, and that's really providing everything you might need to know to create an inclusive and accessible event here in the venue, whether it's working to support people with a disability, people of a number of different genders. It doesn't matter what country you're from or what language that you speak. And of course, we do that in a way that seeks to address reconciliation here in Australia. Innovators and entrepreneurs is another one of those streams. So seeking to provide connections between event organisers and the local innovation talent. So we've had things like introducing startup alleys. We've had a startup stage where talent comes in and pitches. We have the opportunity to invite startups into networking events. They might run a hackathon within your event, and there's an ability to, I guess, tap into technology within the sector of the association that you're hosting an event for, whether it's med tech, creative tech, agri tech. There's any number of startup hubs that are focused on a particular sector and how technology can support it. And of course, the creative industries is the last stream. And while this might not be core to what we call the knowledge economy or productivity or R&D and the other things that we often measure business events, there has been a huge impact on the vibrancy of creative industries, particularly within cities that creatives are getting costed out of. So if we can provide a way to introduce event organisers to emerging creative talent that really does deserve to be on a world-class stage because they're brilliant, to build into gala dinners or networking events and those sorts of things. So we provide those opportunities and we track that talent. So really our objectives for the survey were, to dig a little bit deeper on understanding the expectations of event attendees. The majority of our surveying here at ICC Sydney traditionally was around the client experience or the delegate experience. Were you happy with the AV? Were you happy with the food and beverage? Was the temperature of the room lovely? Were the toilets clean? We didn't really scratch the surface any further than, making sure people were happy with what we had at the moment. So we wanted to dig a little bit deeper, really understand the expectations of event attendees, but also to make sure that all that effort that was going into the legacy program that I just quickly walked you through was being spent in the right place. It takes a lot of effort for us to maintain those relationships and to build those connections with event organisers, and are we on the right track? Is it hitting the note for event attendees? And then of course we wanted to be able to share those results with people like your good selves, so that we can all learn and benefit from the outcomes of the report. So at the end of 2023, we commissioned McCrindle to survey what they call a true representation of Australian society. So they interview 1,000 people across all demographics over the age of 18 and across all locations across our nation. Of those respondents, 46% of Australians said that they attended a business event in 2023, and almost 70% said they attended an entertainment event in 2023. And the majority of attendees at both event types was Gen Z, so that youngest demographic were the largest attendees. And while we run entertainment events as well as business events here at ICC Sydney, which made it relevant for us to ask those questions, as you can see by the title of the trends there, they really are relevant for any event organiser. So the 6 trends that came out of the report were around curated event experiences, socially impactful events, a sustainable means of gathering, prioritising health and wellbeing, promoting human connection, and the seamless integration of technology. So I might just pause there in case you have any questions around the setup before I jump into the statistics. Were there any questions?
Any questions, anybody? If you want, you can just speak or you can put it in chat. Welcome.
Okay, I'll keep moving.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first event, curated event experiences, and the highlight statistics there were that Gen Z, above all attendees, values novelty and customization in their event experiences. And while you might think, well, that's why we run events, we know that our delegates want to come and experience and learn something new. When we dug into the responses and we put it in an Australian context, it really came down to learning about, well, what's different within the setting of the location of the event that we're attending. And so that's, again, for us as Australians, we're that First Nations relations element really comes to the fore, because that's something that Australians can offer to the world through an event, and then each city and region can offer a unique take on that based on the nation of the country on which their event is being held. And when it came to curated event experiences, engaging local communities that contribute to social impact really came to the fore with those responses as well. 50% of respondents expect an event to be curated in a way that includes people with a disability, so that ensuring that that inclusive piece is added there for all delegates. 51% want to see local communities represented, and 41% said showcasing local culture as part of that was important. 39% said they valued creating a culturally inclusive space at events, and 40% valued inclusion of diverse genders and sexuality. So really leaning into that, making sure it's a safe space for those who might identify as LGBTQIA+. We look at trend 2, socially impactful events. What that told us was Australians are no longer content to just attend an event. They want to feel good about attending an event. And you remember I talked about the virtuous consumer from those trends that came through in 2023. I guess what we're talking about here is the virtuous delegate. So they don't just want to attend an event to learn and network in terms of the sector that they work in. They want to attend an event that gives back to community. And so they want to see, again, as we saw in Trend 1, that events are ensuring that they're being held in accessible and inclusive spaces, and that the events also seek to contribute to people in need. So that was a very small example I gave in our legacy program of choosing vegetables as centerpieces for your gala dinner rather than flowers. But that's one of the ways in which we're addressing homelessness here in Sydney. So it's just a small example of what we can do to, be doing good through the events that we hold, as well as the big changes and the big contributions that our industry associations make to society. So trend 2 was also, we saw very high results there around supporting local businesses. So that might be, so supporting local also helps you to reduce the carbon footprint of your event, but it really involves local communities and being inclusive of those with a disability. Continue to rank highly across every demographic there, from baby boomers through Gen X, Y and Z. But if you look, so across all of those demographics, you see accessibility and supporting local rank very highly. But when you get to Gen Z, you see the introduction in the top 3 of providing transparency around practices and processes, so that the importance that new generation places on governance. And I think that starts to link back to some of those headlines that I showed at the outset. We're doing these things to address that trust deficit that the world's facing. Like, what are the things we need to do to build trust and respect within our communities? And this is what event attendees are telling us that they expect us to do. Trend 3 is about creating a sustainable means of gathering together, and half of the Australians that responded to the survey said that they wanted sustainable and environmentally sustainable. Environmentally sustainable events ranked as either extremely important or very important for them. And among the top 10 factors that contribute to a sustainable event were things, food ranked very highly there. You've got addressing food waste in the first instance, donating excess food to charities, seeking to choose local to reduce that footprint, and looking at organic options which are lighter on the environment. More on the waste related topics, we saw, ensuring that there's recycling and composting happening through events, that we're removing those single-use plastics, and making sure to donate any unused resources, but also to limit the amount of things that we're printing. And then rounding out the top 10, they're ensuring that we've got water refill stations so people can, reuse their reusable water bottles rather than buying plastic bottles, and looking for venues specifically when it comes to us that have renewable energy sources or are offsetting their energy. So trend number 4 was about prioritising health and well-being. Simple things like ensuring first aid capacity is evident at the event, but also promoting things like healthy eating, making sure that you're sharing active transport options, and even down to looking at event schedules and making sure that event schedules are being created in a way that promotes health and well-being. And of course, when you look at some of the topics and inclusions in events, people are calling for making sure mental health is a priority. So have you identified sensory areas within the event? Are there low noise areas within the event that people can go to if they're feeling a little bit overstimulated? And then, of course, including topics around mental health and mindfulness within conference sessions, and providing wellness and relaxation areas. Because I've been sitting on my bottom all day and I'm starting to feel like I have a low soy back, so I wish I'd walked around a little bit more. So I'm linking into that one right now. Trend number 5 is about promoting human connection, and as participants in the in-person event industry, this might seem like a no-brainer for us. We're in the business of bringing people together, and we understand all the benefits that having those in-person human interactions can have. But I think it's important that we pause for a moment and just reflect on how much that is needed today in society. Many communities, particularly in cities around the world, are experiencing a loneliness epidemic. And if you remember those annual trends that I mentioned that McCrindle puts out each year, not the ones that are specific to events, as this research tells us, the 2024 societal trends revealed that 60% of Australians reported feeling lonely often, and that when we looked at Gen Z, that statistic went up from 60% to 70%. So, loneliness really is something that the world is grappling with, and our events are an opportunity to bring those people together. But one thing that did come out of the research for Gen Z was making sure when you're thinking about your social media strategy that it's not just about marketing an event, because Gen Z use social media to communicate and connect, and it's often the first step that they take before they come to an in-person event. So how can you use your digital channels to start to build those tribes within a tribe so they feel safe and connected, and then book and attend an event? And then the final event is around the seamless integration of technology. And, we've been looking at this across our events for years, making sure that we're providing simple, sign-in processes, registration processes, those simple things. But again, I guess this starts to really look at Gen Y and Gen Z, and making sure that we're using tech in a way that is embedded into events, so it's part of your event while you're on site. It doesn't replace the on-site version or the in-person version of the event, but how do you use it to start to connect those tribes within tribes, as I mentioned on the previous slide. And then we're looking at ways to enhance the experience with technology. That They are the 6 trends shaping the events industry landscape, as Australians told us through the McCrindle report. And I just wanted to finish my presentation before we open up for questions by showing you a really short clip of the event that we held to launch the report. And through the event, it was about not just launching the results of the report, but demonstrating how we are applying the trends that we saw in the report in a real-time environment. And I'll play that now.
Today we introduce you to a number of experiences to demonstrate our respect for people, place and planet.
I've been so inspired. I've been so moved.
Definitely the emerging talent that we got to see, some amazing Indigenous performers, dancers, singers. That was incredible.
Absolutely. I have loved experiencing this event. It's been amazing.
Everything was really, really top class. I feel like you're doing good for the environment and good for Sydney. So fantastic.
It's the key theme today of respect. As we think about the future is not an inevitable destination, but something that is shaped by the trends, and these can be influenced if understood and responded to.
Okay, so I might just stop sharing my screen there because I feel like I've talked at people for long enough. I'm happy to distribute the report as more detail in there as after the meeting today. But yeah, I guess if there are any questions or comments, it'd be great to hear from everyone.
Samantha, thank you so much. That was so insightful. There was so much information there. One of the things that struck me was that was there anything that kind of surprised you or you found remarkable, different to what you had expected from the public?
Yeah, look, I guess we there wasn't really anything that surprised us, but some of those key takeaways for us were around understanding the differences, the slight nuances from each demographic, like as we saw in those, what makes a socially impactful event. You saw the same top 3 things across. If you just looked at, well, what are Australians saying, you'd say, okay, it's about accessibility and local communities and local businesses. But then when you broke it down into the demographics, like, well, actually, Gen Z wants to know more about reporting and processes and transparency and governance. And so you can see how, I guess, our values as society are changing, and they're being driven from the ground up, really, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to see confirmation of things that we a lot of us anticipate really in the event space. And to really see, you know, how it's the younger generation that are driving us all to be better. Does anybody have any questions or comments from Sam, or anything about your own countries where you feel you're picking up similar trends, or that it's slightly different in your country?
I'll ask a question, even though I am in the same country as Sam. So the lack of diversity here. But just I wanted to say thanks, Sam, and the whole of ICC Sydney team for everything that you're doing in this space. It's really pioneering and providing this kind of information to our wider networks is really helpful to help us not only to understand the psyche and how to engage and ensure that events are as accessible as possible, given the different preferences and styles of engagement that come from different generations, but also to really help us to understand how we can connect better, because I think over the past 5 years or so, we've been more connected, but also more disconnected in a lot of ways. So it's really fabulous to see all the initiatives come out. My question to you, Sam, is really around how you are engaging with your suppliers and also your clients, and who are bringing the events into your venue, and how you're paving the way to sway the industry as a whole and into doing better, not just for the events that are held within your venue, but in Sydney and in Australia and globally.
Yeah, I guess the first step is to practice what you preach. So by having, we have a First Nations procurement strategy. We have a local first procurement strategy where we seek to provide not just local food and beverage suppliers, but local businesses that are close to us. So, whether it's, it might be supporting those creative industries who find it very challenging to afford rent and lease studios and all of those sorts of things in expensive cities, that any way that we can give back. And I guess sharing those experiences, as we did at the event to launch the report, and at other client engagement events that we hold throughout the year, it's just about showcasing those elements of the supply chain that we've tapped into, so that other people can see it, other parts of the ecosystem can see how much that can be a benefit. We've got, every time we hold one of those client engagement events, we get a few more event organisers that tap into those suppliers. And of course, we make the supply chains that we have access to available through the Legacy program to the event organisers coming here to ICC Sydney. So we're a registered member of Supply Nation, which has a database of, I think, something like 70,000 Aboriginal businesses are listed on there. So you can, really vet in the first instance, am I dealing with a First Nations business or not, because that's the accreditation process, and we're happy to check those for people who might be wanting to work with suppliers in that way.
And Sam, do you find that some clients are reluctant to take on these kind of initiatives because of the expense? Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so I think the expense, there isn't necessarily an additional financial cost. Sometimes there may be, other times there may not be. If we're talking about cultural representation, one of the reasons I first went down the road of wanting to create the Legacy program was our first big international event that we held here. Had a graphic designer based in London draw a piece of what could be misconstrued as Aboriginal art as part of their logo. And so, immediately we thought, oh gosh, how can we share that, why, with our event organisers, why that is a cultural appropriation, or why that is, why it's important to engage a First Nations artist if you want to represent their culture in that way. And yes, there will be a cost that comes to that, because like any artist, they should be paid for the work that they do. But I think more challenging is the resourcing and the time to engage with things that might be seen as extra to all of the multitude of actions that you have to deliver upon to run a big international event. And often we will hear from event organisers, that's great, and we really want to do that. And particularly one of the streams we find the most challenging is that innovators and entrepreneurs stream, and building that direct link between these, the amazing young talent that's across the world, sitting in startups around cities around the world, that it's difficult to navigate where to go to. And I guess that's where our program helps to connect the right people at the right time. So I think it's just, communicating early with what your goals are for your event and working with the city, whether it's with us or the Bureau of a city, on getting them to do that. It's almost like an accreditation process, so you know that these are trusted partners of that venue or of that city, to make it easier for the event organizer. So I think perhaps it's about being smarter with your time rather than necessarily costing more.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to get that message out internationally, I think.
Yeah.
I'd just like to thank you so much, Sam, for your time today. It's really very interesting, and we will put it on the INCON website. I hope you all have a really nice rest of day. Sam, I hope you have a nice evening, and we'll see you all soon.